While I delivered a baby, the mother asked, "Do not tell my husband it is a girl." The contraction hit like a sledgehammer, and Amira Kassab's scream echoed through delivery room 3 at 11:47 p.m. on what had started as a quiet Tuesday night shift. I delivered over 2,000 babies in my 10 years as an obstetrician, but something in her eyes made my stomach clench with dread. "Dr. Chen," she gasped between ragged breaths, her olive-skinned fingers gripping my wrist with surprising strength. "Please. I need to ask you something." I checked her dilation, 8 centimeters. We had maybe an hour, possibly less. "What is it, Amira?" "You're doing great, but I need you to focus on breathing." "My husband." She winced as another wave of pain crashed over her. "Omar said if this baby isn't a boy, he'll divorce me. He'll take Layla and move back to Lebanon with his family. He said I'm worthless if I can't give him sons." I'd met Omar Kassab twice during prenatal visits. Tall, broad-shouldered, with calculating eyes that never quite met mine when I spoke. Both times, Amira had seemed to shrink into herself whenever he entered the room, answering questions in barely audible whispers while he dominated every conversation about his pregnancy. "Amira, you can't control the baby's gender. Surely Omar understands." "No." Her voice cracked. "You don't understand. He's already looking at apartments. He showed me the papers, custody documents his lawyer prepared. If this baby is a girl, he'll file tomorrow morning. He has money, connections. I'm just a part-time teacher who barely speaks English without an accent." The fetal monitor showed a strong heartbeat, 140 beats per minute. Completely normal for either gender, though I already knew what I'd seen on the ultrasound 6 weeks ago. The ultrasound Amira had begged me not to reveal, saying she wanted to be surprised. She hadn't wanted to be surprised. She'd been terrified to know. "Dr. Chen, I'm begging you." Tears streamed down her face, mixing with sweat. "When the baby comes, if it's a girl, can you tell him it's a boy? Just until I figure out what to do. Maybe I can take both kids and go to my sister in California before he realizes." I stared at her, my hands automatically checking her progress. 9 centimeters now. "Amira, I can't lie about." "Please." Her grip tightened. "I've seen what he does when he's angry. The hole in our bedroom wall. How Layla hides under her bed when Daddy starts yelling. If you tell him it's a girl, he'll look at this baby with hatred from the first second of her life. I can't. I can't let my daughter grow up knowing her father wishes she was never born." The delivery room door slammed open. Omar Kassab strode in wearing an expensive suit despite the midnight hour, his dark hair perfectly styled even after what I assumed was a rush drive to the hospital. "How much longer?" he demanded, not bothering to ask how his wife was feeling. "I have a conference call with Dubai at 6 a.m. This better be quick." Amira's face went pale, and I felt something protective and fierce rise in my chest. "Sir, I need you to wait outside while." "Absolutely not. I want to know the second my son is born." He positioned himself at the foot of the bed, arms crossed. "Well, is he coming or not?" I looked at Amira, whose terrified eyes pleaded with me silently, then at Omar's expectant face. The baby crowned at exactly 12:23 a.m. The baby's head emerged with a rush of fluid, and I instinctively cupped the tiny skull in my palm. Dark hair, slicked down and perfect. The shoulders followed with the next push, and then suddenly she was here, all 6 pounds, 14 ounces of her, letting out a piercing wail that filled the room. A beautiful, perfect baby girl. "Is it a boy?" Omar stepped closer, craning his neck to see. "Let me see my son." I held the baby against my chest, umbilical cord still attached, my mind racing. The infant's genitals were clearly visible to me, but from Omar's angle across the room, the cord and my hands blocked his view. Amira was staring at me with such desperate hope that I felt sick. "I need to clear the airway first," I said, buying time while I suctioned the baby's nose and mouth. "Nurse Martinez, can you prepare the warming table?" "Of course, Dr. Chen." Elena Martinez had been working labor and delivery for 15 years. She glanced at the baby, then at me, a question in her dark eyes. She'd obviously noted the gender. "My son," Omar said proudly, pulling out his phone. "I need to call my father in Beirut. He's been waiting for news about his first grandson." Amira whimpered softly. I finished delivering the placenta and began the standard newborn assessment, keeping the baby positioned so Omar couldn't get a clear view. The infant was healthy, APGAR scores of 8 and 9, strong muscle tone, good color after the initial cry. "When do I get to hold him?" Omar demanded. "And why haven't you said anything? Is something wrong with my son?" "Everything looks normal," I said carefully. "We just need to complete our standard procedures." "Dr. Chen." Elena's voice was quiet but pointed. "Should I prepare the birth certificate paperwork?" "The birth certificate. Official documentation that would need to list the correct gender." I couldn't falsify legal documents, even if I wanted to help Amira. The weight of that reality hit me as I wrapped the baby in a pink and blue striped blanket. "I need 5 more minutes for the assessment," I told Omar. "Why don't you call your father? I'm sure he's anxious for the news." Omar stepped into the hallway, already dialing. Through the glass window, I could see him pacing, gesturing excitedly as he spoke in rapid Arabic. "Amira," I whispered urgently. "I can't falsify official documents. The birth certificate has to show the correct gender, and the hospital records." "I know." Her voice was barely audible. Maybe you could tell him it's a boy tonight? Give me time to call my sister, make arrangements? By the time he sees the paperwork, maybe I can be gone." "Mama," Elena said softly, approaching Amira's bedside. "I've seen this before. Men like your husband don't change their minds about these things. Even if you had 10 sons, he'd find other ways to control you." "You don't understand," Amira said, tears flowing again. "He's not evil, he's just traditional. His family has expectations. Pressure." I looked down at the baby girl in my arms, her tiny fist wrapped around my index finger. In a few minutes, Omar would return demanding answers. The night shift supervisor would need the birth information for the hospital database. The pediatrician would arrive for the newborn examination. And somewhere in this maze of procedures and protocols, I had to find a way to protect this woman and her daughter without destroying my own career, or worse, without making things more dangerous for them both. The delivery room door opened again. Omar walked back in, grinning widely. My father is flying in from Lebanon next week to meet his grandson, he announced. Now, let me hold my son. I held the baby closer, feeling her tiny heartbeat against my chest. Actually, Omar, I need to discuss something with you first. What's there to discuss? Give me my son. He held out his arms expectantly. Please, sit down. I gestured to the chair beside Amira's bed. There are some complications we need to address. Omar's expression shifted from excitement to alarm. Complications? What kind of complications? Is something wrong with the baby? Elena caught my eye and moved closer to the warming table, her hand hovering near the emergency call button. She'd worked enough difficult deliveries to recognize when a situation was about to explode. The baby is perfectly healthy, I said carefully. But we need to talk about your expectations versus reality. My expectations? Omar's voice rose. My expectation is to hold my healthy son. What reality are you talking about? Amira struggled to sit up straighter in the bed, wincing from the pain. Omar, please, just listen to what Dr. Chen has to say. Don't tell me to listen to anyone. He whirled on his wife. You've been acting strange this entire pregnancy. Secretive. Refusing to find out the gender, insisting on this American doctor instead of Dr. Mahmoud who delivered Layla. The pieces clicked together in my mind. You wanted Dr. Mahmoud because you thought he'd be more accommodating to your cultural preferences? Omar's jaw tightened. Dr. Mahmoud understands family dynamics. He knows that some information should be shared with the head of household first, not broadcast to everyone. The head of household? I felt my professional composure slipping. Omar, your wife just spent 14 hours in labor. She's the patient, not you. In your American hospitals, maybe. But in my family, I make the decisions. He stepped closer to me. Now give me my son before I file a complaint with your supervisor. The baby began to fuss in my arms, her tiny face scrunching up. I had maybe 30 seconds before she'd need to feed, and Amira would need skin-to-skin contact for bonding. But once Omar held this child, once he saw the truth, I knew exactly what would happen. Elena, I said quietly, please call Dr. Reeves from pediatrics. Tell him we have a complex family situation that may require social services consultation. Social services? Omar's voice turned dangerous. You're calling social services on my family? For what? For threatening to abandon your child based on gender, I said, meeting his stare directly. That constitutes emotional abuse and potential endangerment. The room went dead silent except for the baby's soft whimpering and the steady beep of Amira's monitors. You have no right, Omar said slowly, to interfere in my family's private matters. Actually, I have every right. I'm a mandatory reporter, and I've just heard you explicitly threaten to abandon this child if she doesn't meet your specifications. The slip was intentional, and Omar caught it immediately. She? His eyes narrowed. Did you just say she? Amira let out a small, broken sob. Elena moved closer to the bed, positioning herself between Omar and his wife. Let me see the baby, Omar demanded. Right now. Omar, please, Amira whispered. She's still your daughter. She's beautiful and perfect, and... No. He backed away from the bed as if he'd been struck. No, this isn't happening. You promised me. You swore this time would be different. I can't control the baby's gender any more than you can, Amira said through her tears. Please, just hold her. Once you see her face. I don't want to see her face. Omar's voice echoed off the delivery room walls. Do you understand what you've done to me? To our family? The baby's cries grew louder, and I found myself making a decision that would change everything. Elena, call security. And get Dr. Reeves up here immediately. Security arrived within 90 seconds, 2 officers I recognized from the night shift, Marcus Webb and Diana Foster. Marcus was built like a linebacker but had the gentlest hands I'd ever seen with newborns. Diana had a teenage daughter of her own and zero tolerance for men who intimidated women. What's the situation, Dr. Chen? Diana asked, taking in the scene with practiced eyes. Omar straightened his tie, instantly shifting into what I recognized as his professional persona. There's no situation. These women are being dramatic about a private family matter. The situation, I said firmly, is that Mr. Kassab has explicitly threatened to abandon his newborn daughter and divorce his wife because the baby isn't male. He's also implied he'll take their 4-year-old daughter away from her mother. That's not illegal, Omar said coldly. I have every right to divorce my wife and seek custody of my children. Marcus stepped closer to the bed. Sir, I'm going to need you to lower your voice. This is a hospital, and you're disturbing other patients. I want to see the department supervisor, Omar demanded. This doctor is interfering with my family based on her own cultural biases. The baby's cries were getting more urgent. I looked at Amira, whose hospital gown was soaked with sweat and tears. Amira, your daughter needs to feed. Can I bring her to you? Don't, Omar snapped. Don't you dare hand that baby to my wife until I decide what's happening here. Diana's expression hardened. Excuse me, sir. Did you just tell a medical professional not to provide care to her patients? I'm the father. I have rights. You have some rights, Diana corrected. But you don't have the right to interfere with medical care or to threaten abandonment of a newborn. Dr. James Reeves pushed through the door, slightly out of breath from what must have been a run from the NICU. At 62, he'd seen every kind of family crisis the maternity ward could produce. His gray hair was disheveled, and his glasses sat crooked on his nose. Dr. Chen, I understand we have a concerning situation? Dr. Reeves, I need a pediatric evaluation for this infant, and I'm requesting a social services consultation for potential abandonment and emotional abuse. Omar laughed bitterly. Emotional abuse? I haven't even touched the child. I haven't said a word to it. That's exactly the problem, Dr. Reeves said quietly. Mr. Kassab, your daughter is approximately 15 minutes old, and you haven't once asked about her health or shown any concern for her well-being. Because I don't want her. Omar's mask finally slipped completely. I already have one daughter. I need sons to carry on my family name, to take over my business someday. What am I supposed to do with another girl? The silence that followed was deafening. Even the baby seemed to quiet, as if sensing the hatred in her father's voice. Love her, Amira whispered from the bed. You're supposed to love her. Omar turned to his wife with such cold fury that both security officers moved closer. Love her? Like you loved disappointing me again? Like you loved destroying my family's future? That's enough. My voice cut through his tirade. Elena, please take the baby to Amira for immediate feeding and bonding. Marcus, I need Mr. Kassab escorted from this room while I complete my medical documentation. You can't kick me out, Omar protested. I'm the father. Actually, Dr. Rees interjected, consulting his phone. According to Hospital Policy 847B, any individual who demonstrates hostility toward a newborn or poses a threat to patient well-being can be temporarily restricted from the maternity unit. Dr. Chen, Elena said softly, placing the baby in Amira's arms. I have Cheryl Morrison from Social Services on line 3. She can be here in 20 minutes. As I watched Amira cradle her daughter for the first time, the baby immediately settling against her mother's chest, I realized this was just the beginning. Omar wasn't going to disappear quietly into the night. Men like him never did. Omar pulled out his phone and started dialing. I'm calling my lawyer right now. David Kellerman handles all my business litigation, but he'll know family law attorneys who can get emergency custody orders. At 1:15 a.m.? Diana raised an eyebrow. Must be some lawyer. David owes me favors. I've thrown six-figure contracts his way over the past 3 years. Omar's fingers moved rapidly across the screen. Hello, David? Yes, I know what time it is. I need an emergency family law referral. Yes, tonight. I watched Amira's face crumble as she listened to her husband arrange their family's destruction while she held their 15-minute-old daughter. The baby had latched immediately and was feeding contentedly, completely unaware that her father was already planning to erase her from his life. Elena, I whispered, what's our standard protocol for documenting parental rejection situations? Form 2847C goes to Social Services, copy to Hospital Administration, and we photograph any visible distress indicators. She paused. Dr. Chen, I've been doing this for 15 years. I've never seen a father refuse to even look at a healthy newborn. Through the glass window, I could see nurses from other delivery rooms gathering curiously. Word traveled fast on the maternity ward, especially when security was involved. By morning, this would be the story everyone whispered about during shift changes. David's connecting me with Margaret Hensley, Omar announced, lowering his phone momentarily. Best family law attorney in the state. She's handled 3 custody cases against Middle Eastern women who tried to flee to other countries with children. Amira's milk flow stopped abruptly, a stress response I'd seen before in traumatized new mothers. The baby began fussing again, sensing her mother's anxiety. Omar, I said, trying once more, you're talking about destroying your family over something completely beyond anyone's control. Male or female, this is your child. This is not my child, he replied without looking at the baby. My children will be sons who can inherit my import business and maintain family honor. I already told my father in Beirut that he has a grandson. Do you understand what it means for me to go back and tell him I lied? So tell him you have a granddaughter instead, Marcus suggested. Most grandparents are just happy when babies are healthy. Omar's laugh was bitter. You have no idea what you're talking about. My father already disapproves of me marrying outside our immediate community. He tolerated Layla because he assumed more sons would follow. Now I have to explain that my American wife has given me 2 daughters and no heirs. Dr. Reeves finished reviewing something on his tablet. Mr. Kassab, I've just documented this conversation in the hospital's permanent records. Your explicit rejection of this infant creates legal obligations for us as mandatory reporters. Fine. Report whatever you want. Omar's phone buzzed. Margaret? Yes, thank you for taking my call. I need emergency custody modification papers filed first thing this morning. That's correct, I'm taking my 4-year-old daughter back to Lebanon, and I want it legally documented that I'm not financially responsible for the newborn. No, not adoption proceedings. I want complete termination of parental rights and obligations. Amira made a sound like a wounded animal. The baby pulled away from her breast, startled by her mother's distress, and began crying again. Elena, call Dr. Sandra Kim from psychiatry, I said quietly. We need an emergency postpartum mental health evaluation. Already on it, she replied, fingers flying across her phone. She's finishing up in the ER but can be here by 2:30. Omar ended his call looking satisfied. Margaret will have preliminary papers ready by 9 a.m. I'll file for sole custody of Layla, dissolution of marriage, and complete relinquishment of rights regarding. He gestured dismissively toward the baby. Whatever you decide to call it. Her, Amira said with sudden strength in her voice. Her name is Nora. After my grandmother who raised 7 children alone when my grandfather died. It was the first time I'd heard her speak her daughter's name aloud, and something shifted in the room's energy. Nora, I repeated, testing the name. Something about Amira speaking it aloud seemed to strengthen her resolve. That's a beautiful name. Omar's phone rang again, and he answered without hesitation. Margaret? That was fast. What do you mean there's a problem? I watched his confident expression falter as he listened to his attorney. Behind him, Diana was quietly speaking into her radio, probably updating the charge nurse about our situation. What do you mean I can't just terminate rights? Omar's voice rose. Other fathers abandon children all the time. What waiting period? Dr. Reeves caught my attention and gestured toward the hallway. I stepped closer to hear him whisper, Dr. Chen, I just got off the phone with legal. If Mr. Kassab officially abandons this child, the hospital becomes responsible for her care until state services can intervene. We're talking about potential weeks in the NICU at $3,200 per day. The financial implications hit me immediately. Insurance companies didn't cover abandoned newborns indefinitely, and if Omar successfully terminated his rights before Amira could establish independent custody, baby Nora could become a ward of the state. Furthermore, Omar was saying into his phone, I want documentation that this child was conceived through my wife's deliberate deception about fertility timing. What do you mean that's not legally relevant? Amira shifted in the bed, trying to find a more comfortable position while keeping Nora against her chest. Dr. Chen, can you tell me honestly, if Omar files those papers tomorrow, what happens to us? I sat down in the chair beside her bed, keeping my voice low. The hospital social worker will need to verify that you can provide safe housing and financial support for both children. If Omar cuts off access to your joint accounts or forces you out of the family home, that becomes complicated. He already changed the locks on his home office last month, she whispered. And he moved our savings into accounts with only his name. He said it was for tax purposes. Elena appeared at my shoulder with a tablet. Dr. Chan, I hate to interrupt, but we have an issue. Mr. Kasab's insurance policy lists him as the primary holder, with family coverage dependent on his continued enrollment. If he removes Amira and the baby from his policy, their coverage ends immediately. Can he do that? Amira asked, panic creeping into her voice. Technically, yes, Dr. Reeves said grimly. We've seen it before in contentious divorce situations. Spouses use insurance coverage as leverage. Omar ended his call and turned back to us with renewed determination. Margaret explained the legal timeline. I can't terminate my rights tonight, but I can stop all financial support effective immediately. I'm calling my bank right now to freeze our joint accounts and remove Amira's access to credit cards. Omar, please, Amira begged. How am I supposed to take care of Layla? She needs her preschool tuition paid, and rent is due on Friday for your mother's assisted living facility. My mother is my responsibility, not yours. And Layla will be living with me, so her expenses are no longer your concern. He dialed another number. First National Bank? This is Omar Kasab, account holder 847 to 392. I need to report suspicious activity on my joint accounts and request immediate freezing of all cards linked to my wife's name. I felt sick watching him systematically destroy his family's security while his newborn daughter lay innocent in her mother's arms. But then I remembered something from their intake paperwork 6 months ago. Amira, I said carefully, didn't you mention that you have your own teaching certificate from Lebanon? Something about credential transfer paperwork? Her eyes brightened slightly. Yes, I've been working with the state education department to get my credentials recognized. I taught high school mathematics in Beirut for 6 years before we moved here. Omar paused his phone conversation. That certificate is worthless here. She can barely handle substituting at elementary schools. Actually, Elena interjected, consulting her tablet, I'm looking at the county school district website right now. They're desperately seeking bilingual math teachers. Starting salary for certified teachers with international experience is $52,000 annually, plus full benefits including medical coverage. $52,000? Amira's voice carried a note of hope I hadn't heard all night. Omar's confidence wavered. You don't have a car. You don't know anyone. You think you can just walk into some teaching job and support 2 children? My sister Layla in Sacramento has been telling me to apply there for months, Amira said, her voice getting stronger. She runs an ESL program and knows principals who specifically want teachers with Middle Eastern language skills. Dr. Reeves smiled. Sacramento has excellent family support services too. And California's family court system tends to be very protective of mothers with newborns. You're all living in fantasy land, Omar snapped. I have legal custody of Layla, established residency in the state, and financial resources. No judge is going to let Amira disappear to California with my 4-year-old daughter. Actually, Diana said, ending her radio conversation, I just spoke with our legal department. Since no custody orders currently exist, both parents have equal rights to make decisions about the 4-year-old's residence until a court rules otherwise. Omar's phone buzzed with what I assumed was a callback from his bank. But instead of answering, he stared at his wife and newborn daughter with an expression I couldn't quite read. Margaret wants to meet first thing tomorrow morning to review all our options, he said finally. But she warned me that abandoning a healthy newborn looks very bad to family court judges, even when cultural preferences are involved. For the first time since entering the delivery room, Omar seemed uncertain about his plan. Baby Nora had fallen asleep against her mother's chest, one tiny fist curled around Amira's finger. In the harsh fluorescent lighting, she looked impossibly small and vulnerable. Omar, I said quietly, why don't you just hold your daughter once before making any permanent decisions? The words hung in the air like a challenge. Omar stared at me, then at the sleeping baby, his jaw working silently. For a moment, I thought he might actually consider it. Absolutely not. He stepped backward, nearly bumping into Marcus. I'm not going to bond with a child I don't want. That would make this harder for everyone. Harder for who? Elena asked pointedly. Certainly not harder for that innocent baby. Omar's phone rang again, his bank calling back. Yes, this is Omar Kasab. What do you mean you can't freeze the accounts tonight? I don't care what your standard procedure is, I need those cards deactivated immediately. While he argued with the bank representative, Dr. Reeves pulled me aside. Sarah, I just got disturbing information from our intake database. This is the Kasab family's second daughter, but there's something odd about their first pregnancy. My stomach dropped. What kind of odd? Amira was actually pregnant 3 times. The first pregnancy ended in miscarriage at 18 weeks, a male fetus. The second pregnancy also ended in miscarriage, but here's the concerning part, she was treated for severe dehydration and malnutrition at 20 weeks. Jesus. You think he was restricting her food because that baby was female? I can't prove it, but the pattern is suspicious. Both miscarriages happened after the gender could be determined. Then she had Layla, a successful pregnancy she carried to full term, but Omar insisted on hiring a male obstetrician who wouldn't discuss the pregnancy details with anyone except the head of household. I felt pieces clicking into place. That's why she specifically requested a female doctor this time. And why she refused to learn the gender. Sarah, Elena whispered urgently, he's getting agitated about the bank situation. Omar had raised his voice loud enough that I could hear his side of the conversation. What do you mean there's a mandatory waiting period for account modifications during divorce proceedings? Who reported divorce proceedings? He whirled around to face us. Which one of you called my bank about divorce filings? None of us, Diana said calmly. But when you called your attorney about emergency custody modifications and terminating parental rights, that automatically triggers certain financial protections in the system. What financial protections? Dr. Reeves consulted his phone. Under state law, once either spouse initiates formal family dissolution proceedings, both parties' assets are temporarily frozen to prevent one spouse from hiding money or leaving the other destitute. Omar's face went pale. That's not. Margaret didn't mention any asset freezes. Your attorney probably assumed you discussed this with your wife first, I said. Most couples work out temporary support agreements before filing papers. I need those accounts accessible for my business operations, Omar said, panic creeping into his voice. I have a container shipment arriving from Dubai next week that requires a $75,000 customs payment. Amira looked up from nursing Nora. Maybe you should have thought about that before trying to abandon your daughter. The baby stirred at her mother's voice, making tiny contented sounds. Even exhausted from 14 hours of labor, Amira was a natural mother, constantly adjusting Nora's position, stroking her dark hair, whispering soft Arabic lullabies. This is insane, Omar muttered, dialing again. Margaret? We have a problem with the asset freezing. What do you mean I triggered it myself? Can't you reverse it? While he argued with his attorney, Elena showed me something on her tablet. Dr. Chen, look at this. I pulled up the emergency contact information from when Layla was born 4 years ago. The screen showed a familiar name, Dr. Mahmoud Rashid, the obstetrician Omar had mentioned earlier. But there was an additional note in red text, patient reported concerning family pressure regarding gender preferences. Recommended social services consultation, declined by patient request. Even 4 years ago, someone had noticed warning signs about this family. Dr. Chen, Elena said, her voice tight with urgency, I just received a call from the pediatric unit. There's been a development. I looked up from where I was helping Amira adjust Nora's feeding position. Omar had stepped into the hallway, still arguing loudly with his attorney about the asset freeze that was apparently threatening his business operations. What kind of development? Elena glanced toward the door, then lowered her voice. Security ran a standard background check on Mr. Kassab when we initiated the social services protocol. He has a previous CPS report filed against him in Michigan from 2019. My blood went cold. For what? Emotional abuse of his first daughter, Layla. A preschool teacher reported that the 4-year-old kept saying Daddy wishes I was a boy and demonstrated concerning behavioral regression. Elena scrolled through her tablet. The case was closed when the family suddenly moved out of state, here to our city. Amira's face went ashen. I remember that teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez. She said Layla was having nightmares about disappointing Daddy. But Omar convinced me it was just normal adjustment issues after his mother moved in with us. There's more, Elena continued quietly. The Michigan report mentions that Mr. Kassab was researching family rebalancing procedures, essentially looking into ways to guarantee male children through selective fertility treatments. Dr. Reeves appeared in the doorway, slightly out of breath. Sarah, we need to discuss something privately. Can you step outside for a moment? I handed baby Nora back to Amira and followed him into the hallway. Omar was pacing near the nurse's station, still on his phone, gesticulating wildly as he spoke in rapid Arabic. What's going on, James? I just received a very disturbing call from Dr. Susan Martinez at Sacramento General Hospital. She's Amira's sister, Dr. Layla Hafez, the ESL program director we mentioned earlier. Amira's sister is a doctor? PhD in linguistics, and she's been expecting this call for months. Apparently, Amira has been secretly sending her documentation of Omar's increasingly controlling behavior. Bank statements showing him restricting her access to money, photos of property damage during his anger episodes, even recordings of him threatening to send her back to Lebanon empty-handed if she didn't produce sons. I felt a chill run down my spine. She's been building a case. More than that. Dr. Hafez has already consulted with family law attorneys in California. She's prepared to provide immediate housing, financial support, and legal representation for both Amira and the children. But here's the crucial part, they need Amira and both girls out of this state before Omar realizes what's happening. Through the glass window, I could see Amira stroking Nora's tiny cheek while the baby slept peacefully. She looked exhausted but determined, nothing like the terrified woman who had begged me to lie about her daughter's gender just 2 hours ago. How much does Amira know about her sister's preparations? Everything. The plan has been in motion since her second trimester. Dr. Hafez has been funding a private savings account for Amira through electronic transfers disguised as family gifts. As of yesterday, there's $23,000 available for relocation expenses. Omar's voice rose sharply from the nurse's station. What do you mean the account freeze affects my business accounts too? Those are separate corporate entities. James, what exactly is Dr. Hafez asking us to do? Dr. Reeves pulled out his phone and showed me a text message. She's driving here from Sacramento right now. Left 2 hours ago when Elena first called about the delivery complications. She'll be here by 4:30 a.m. with legal paperwork, a car seat, and everything needed for immediate transport. That's kidnapping if there are no custody orders in place. Actually, it's not. I consulted with our hospital legal counsel 20 minutes ago. Since both parents currently have equal rights, and since we have documented evidence of Omar's explicit rejection of the newborn, Amira can legally relocate with both children until a court rules otherwise. Omar ended his call and started walking back toward the delivery room, his expression thunderous. Dr. Reeves, I said quickly, does Amira know her sister is coming? Not yet. Dr. Hafez wanted to make sure the baby was safely delivered before revealing the final phase of their plan. He paused. Sarah, in 30 years of practicing medicine, I've never seen a situation this complex. But I've also never seen a mother this prepared to protect her children. Omar pushed through the delivery room doors just as Dr. Hafez's number appeared on Elena's phone screen. The next few hours would determine whether this family stayed trapped in Omar's control, or whether 2 little girls would finally escape their father's conditional love. Elena stepped away to take the call from Dr. Hafez while Omar settled into the chair beside Amira's bed, though he still refused to look directly at baby Nora. I busied myself updating the medical charts, but I could feel the tension crackling in the air like electricity before a storm. The bank manager is reviewing my accounts personally at 6 a.m., Omar announced. This asset freeze is temporary, a bureaucratic mistake that will be resolved by noon tomorrow. Amira shifted Nora to her shoulder for burping. And then what, Omar? You take Layla and disappear to Lebanon while I'm stuck here with a newborn and no way to pay rent? You should have thought about that before disappointing me again. His voice was cold, businesslike. I gave you every advantage, private healthcare, a house in the best school district, even hired that expensive fertility specialist last year to optimize your chances. Dr. Morrison wasn't a fertility specialist, Amira said quietly. He was a gender selection consultant. You wanted him to guarantee you could choose the baby's sex. My pen froze over the chart. Omar, you attempted gender selection procedures? It's perfectly legal, he said defensively. Pre-implantation genetic diagnosis for family balancing. Dr. Morrison said we could increase our odds of male conception to nearly 90% through timed hormone treatments and selective embryo transfer. But we couldn't afford the $47,000 procedure, Amira added, her voice getting stronger. So you made me take unproven herbal supplements and follow that restrictive diet that made me sick for months. Elena returned from her phone call, her expression carefully neutral. Dr. Chen, I need to update you on the insurance verification. Mrs. Kassab's coverage remains active through her own teachers' union policy. Apparently she's been paying premiums independently. Omar's head snapped up. That's impossible. Amira doesn't work full-time. Actually, Elena consulted her tablet, Mrs. Kassab has been substitute teaching an average of 4 days per week this school year, which qualifies her for union benefits. Her policy covers both children regardless of your family status. I watched Omar's confidence falter slightly. He'd clearly assumed financial control would force Amira into compliance, but she'd been more prepared than he realized. Furthermore, Elena continued, the union representative is sending someone to the hospital this morning to discuss Mrs. Kassab's application for full-time position starting in the fall semester. What application? Omar demanded. You never mentioned any job applications. Amira met his stare directly. I've been planning for this moment since Layla was born, Omar. Every time you criticized me for having daughters, every time you threatened to replace me with a wife who could perform better, I got a little more prepared to survive without you. Baby Nora made a soft cooing sound, and Amira automatically adjusted her position. The natural maternal instinct was beautiful to watch. This woman was born to be a mother, regardless of her daughter's gender. You can't take Layla out of state, Omar said, but his voice lacked its earlier conviction. I'll get an emergency restraining order. Based on what grounds? Dr. Reeves had returned with coffee and what looked like legal documents. You've spent the last 3 hours explicitly rejecting your newborn daughter and threatening to abandon your family. No judge will view you as a stable parent in this situation. Omar's phone buzzed with a text message. He read it, and his face went pale. What is it? Amira asked. My attorney. She says the CPS report from Michigan has been forwarded to local social services here. They're opening an investigation into my fitness as a parent. He looked up at me with something approaching panic. Dr. Chen, you have to understand, I'm not a bad father. I love Layla. I needed sons for my family legacy. Omar, I said gently, love isn't conditional on gender. Layla is already your legacy. Through the delivery room window, I could see a woman in a professional suit talking quietly with Diana at the nurse's station. Dr. Layla Hafez had arrived ahead of schedule, and she looked like she meant business. The real confrontation was about to begin. Dr. Layla Hafez entered the delivery room at 4:47 a.m. looking nothing like the exhausted woman I'd expected after a middle-of-the-night drive from Sacramento. Tall and composed, wearing a navy business suit despite the early hour, she carried herself with the quiet authority of someone accustomed to handling crises. Amira, Habibti, she said softly, moving directly to her sister's bedside and speaking in Arabic before switching to English. How are you feeling? Layla? Omar stood abruptly, nearly knocking over his chair. What are you doing here? How did you even know? I've been in contact with the hospital since midnight, Dr. Hafez replied coolly, not bothering to look at him. Elena Martinez called me when it became clear we might need to implement our contingency plan. Omar's confusion was evident. What contingency plan? What is she talking about, Amira? Amira shifted baby Nora protectively in her arms. Omar, I want you to meet my daughter. Her name is Nora Hafez Kassab, and she's perfect. Hafez? Omar's voice rose dangerously. You gave her your family name? I gave her my grandmother's name, Amira corrected. The grandmother who raised 7 children alone and built a successful business when her husband decided his family wasn't worth staying for. Dr. Hafez opened her leather briefcase and withdrew a manila folder. Mr. Kassab, I'm here in my capacity as Dr. Amira Hafez Kassab's emergency contact and legal advocate. I have temporary guardianship papers for both children, signed by a family court judge in Sacramento County 3 hours ago. That's impossible, Omar sputtered. You can't get emergency custody orders in the middle of the night for children in another state. Elena stepped forward. Actually, under the Interstate Emergency Child Protection Act, when there's documented evidence of parental abandonment and emotional abuse, emergency jurisdiction can be transferred to any state where the children have close family willing to provide immediate care. Dr. Hafez handed Omar a set of papers. These documents establish temporary custody with me until Amira can relocate to California and file for permanent custody in Sacramento County. The judge reviewed recordings of your explicit rejection of your newborn daughter, witness statements from hospital staff, and the previous CPS report from Michigan. Omar's hand shook as he scanned the paperwork. Recordings? What recordings? Hospital policy requires audio documentation of all high-risk delivery situations, Dr. Reese explained. When security was called and social services were contacted, everything became part of the official record. This is entrapment, Omar said desperately. You manipulated me into saying things while I was under stress. No one manipulated you into threatening to abandon your newborn daughter, I said firmly. You made those statements clearly and repeatedly, in front of multiple witnesses. Dr. Hafez consulted her watch. Mr. Kassab, you have 2 choices. You can sign voluntary temporary custody relinquishment papers, which allows you to petition for modified custody arrangements once you've completed court-mandated counseling. Or you can fight this, which will result in an immediate formal child abandonment investigation and likely criminal charges. Criminal charges? Omar's voice cracked. California Penal Code 270 makes it a felony to willfully fail to provide necessary care for a child under 18, she continued calmly. Your recorded statements constitute clear intent to abandon a newborn, which carries a mandatory minimum sentence of 2 years. Baby Nora stirred in Amira's arms, making tiny mewing sounds. Without thinking, Amira began humming a soft lullaby, and the baby immediately settled. Omar, Amira said quietly, you can still change your mind. Hold your daughter. Get to know her. Maybe you'll discover that loving a child has nothing to do with their gender. For a moment, Omar stared at the sleeping baby. I saw something flicker across his face, maybe curiosity, maybe longing. But then his phone rang, and the moment shattered. It's my father in Beirut, he said, looking at the caller ID. He's expecting news about his grandson. Dr. Hafez and I exchanged glances. The next 30 seconds would determine whether Omar chose his father's expectations over his daughter's future. He answered the call and began speaking in Arabic, his voice gradually rising with what sounded like defensive explanations. Amira's eyes filled with tears, but her grip on baby Nora never wavered. Omar's conversation with his father grew increasingly heated, his Arabic rapid and defensive. I didn't need to understand the words to recognize the tone. He was making excuses, spinning explanations, desperately trying to maintain his fabricated story about having a son. Dr. Hafez listened intently, her expression darkening. He's telling his father that the doctors made a mistake, she translated quietly for us. That there was confusion during delivery, but he definitely has a son. He's still lying? Elena whispered incredulously. Omar is buying himself time, Dr. Hafez explained. In our family's culture, admitting he has 2 daughters means admitting he's failed as a man. His father has already told the entire extended family in Lebanon about his new grandson. Omar ended the call and immediately started dialing another number. I'm calling Dr. Mahmoud. He'll know how to handle this situation properly. Handle it how? I asked, though I was afraid I already knew the answer. Dr. Mahmoud understands family discretion. Maybe there's been some confusion with the hospital records. Maybe the baby's gender wasn't properly verified. Omar's eyes had taken on a manic quality. These things happen during emergency deliveries, right? Medical errors? The room went dead silent. Even baby Nora seemed to sense the tension, stirring restlessly in her mother's arms. Omar, Dr. Reeves said slowly, are you asking us to falsify medical records? I'm asking you to double-check your findings. This baby could be intersex, or have ambiguous genitalia, or... Stop. My voice cut through his desperate rambling. I've examined your daughter thoroughly. She is unambiguously female, completely healthy, and already documented in the hospital's permanent records. What you're suggesting is illegal. Dr. Hafez pulled out her phone. Mr. Kassab, I'm recording this conversation for legal purposes. Are you attempting to coerce medical professionals into committing fraud? Omar's face flushed red. You're all conspiring against me. This is discrimination against my cultural values, my religious beliefs. Your cultural values include rejecting innocent children? Amira's voice was stronger than I'd heard it all night. Because that's not the culture my grandmother taught me. That's not the Islam I practice. Don't lecture me about Islam, Omar snapped. The Quran clearly states that sons are. The Quran states that children are gifts from Allah, Amira interrupted. All children. It says nothing about daughters being less valuable than sons. Elena's tablet chimed with an incoming message. She glanced at it, then looked at me with concern. Dr. Chen, we have a problem. Dr. Mahmoud just called the hospital administration claiming there's been a cultural misunderstanding with one of our deliveries tonight. My stomach dropped. What kind of misunderstanding? He's requesting permission to perform a secondary gender verification examination on baby Nora. He claims the family has religious concerns about the accuracy of our initial assessment. Dr. Hafez's expression turned dangerous. Absolutely not. That man is not coming anywhere near my niece. Who is Dr. Mahmoud exactly? I asked. Omar straightened defensively. He's a respected physician who understands traditional family values. He delivered Layla without any of this interference. Dr. Rashid Mahmoud, Dr. Hafez said grimly, had his privileges revoked at 2 hospitals in Michigan for culturally motivated medical accommodations that violated standard care protocols. He's the one who told Omar that female fetuses could be corrected through experimental hormone treatments. The pieces clicked together horrifically. Omar, you didn't bring your family here just to move closer to business opportunities. You followed Dr. Mahmoud when you relocated his practice. Dr. Mahmoud knows how to help families achieve their goals, Omar said stubbornly. He doesn't judge parents for wanting what's best for their lineage. Elena looked up from her tablet, alarmed. Dr. Chen, Dr. Mahmoud is in the hospital lobby right now. He's requesting immediate access to our patient. Baby Nora chose that moment to wake up and begin crying, not the soft fussing of earlier, but urgent, hungry wails that filled the room. Amira immediately moved to comfort her, but Omar stepped forward aggressively. Give me the baby. Dr. Mahmoud needs to examine him properly. Amira said firmly, clutching Nora protectively. And no one is taking my daughter anywhere. Omar reached toward the baby, and suddenly Diana and Marcus were there, blocking his path. Sir, step back from the patient, Diana commanded. That's my child. That's a child you've spent 4 hours trying to abandon, Marcus replied calmly. Dr. Hafez was already on her phone. Yes, this is Dr. Layla Hafez. I need to speak with Chief of Staff Dr. Williams immediately. I don't care what time it is. Tell him we have a physician attempting to interfere with a Child Protective Services case. Omar's phone rang again, Dr. Mahmoud calling back. As Omar answered, I realized we were approaching a crisis point that could spiral completely out of control. In the hallway, I could see hospital security personnel multiplying, and the charge nurse was directing other staff to clear the surrounding area. Whatever happened in the next few minutes would determine baby Nora's future, and possibly her safety. Omar answered Dr. Mahmoud's call with visible relief, switching immediately to Arabic. Within seconds, his posture changed, shoulders straightening, voice becoming more authoritative. He was drawing strength from his allies' presence in the building. Dr. Mahmoud is reviewing the legal documents now, Omar announced after ending the call. He says there are significant procedural violations in how this case has been handled. The emergency custody papers weren't properly served, and the hospital has no authority to restrict my parental rights without a formal hearing. Dr. Hafez's jaw tightened. Mr. Kassab, those papers were issued by Judge Patricia Morrison at 2:15 a.m. based on documented evidence of child endangerment. Dr. Mahmoud has no legal standing to challenge a family court order. He has medical standing, Omar replied confidently. As Layla's physician of record and our family's trusted healthcare provider, he can request a second opinion on any diagnosis that affects our children's welfare. Elena looked up from her tablet, alarmed. Dr. Chan, I just received a formal request from Dr. Mahmood for immediate access to review baby Nora's medical records and perform what he's calling a comprehensive newborn assessment. On what grounds? Dr. Reeves demanded. Omar pulled out his phone and showed us an official-looking document. Religious accommodation request, filed under the Hospital Patient Rights Act. Dr. Mahmood is citing cultural concerns about potential medical errors that could affect our family's spiritual practices. I felt sick reading the carefully worded request. Dr. Mahmood had found a legal loophole that would be difficult to deny without appearing discriminatory toward religious beliefs. This is ridiculous, I said. There's nothing ambiguous about your daughter's gender. She's a perfectly normal, healthy baby girl. Then you shouldn't mind having a second physician confirm that assessment, Omar replied smoothly. Unless you're concerned about something in your examination? Amira clutched baby Nora tighter. Omar, what exactly do you think Dr. Mahmood is going to find? What are you hoping he'll say? I'm hoping he'll provide an objective medical opinion without all this emotional interference. Omar gestured dismissively at the security officers and social worker. Dr. Mahmood delivered hundreds of babies in Michigan without needing police supervision. Dr. Hafez was typing rapidly on her phone. I'm contacting Judge Morrison directly. This is clearly an attempt to circumvent the custody order through fraudulent medical claims. It's not fraudulent if there are legitimate questions about the initial assessment, Omar argued. Dr. Mahmood explained that intersex conditions aren't always immediately apparent, especially when delivery room staff are focused on other complications. Elena's radio crackled with an update from the lobby. Dr. Chen, Dr. Mahmood is requesting escort to the maternity ward. He's accompanied by what appears to be a legal advocate and someone from the hospital's patient rights office. My heart sank. Omar had clearly planned this contingency, probably during one of his phone calls. Dr. Mahmood wasn't just offering medical support, he'd assembled a small legal team to challenge our authority. James, I said quietly to Dr. Reeves, what happens if the patient rights office sides with their religious accommodation request? Honestly? We might be required to allow the examination, especially if they can demonstrate that cultural factors create legitimate medical concerns. He looked troubled. The hospital can't risk accusations of religious discrimination. Baby Nora had settled into peaceful sleep against her mother's chest, completely oblivious to the battle being fought over her identity. Watching Amira's protective instincts, seeing how naturally she bonded with her daughter, I knew we couldn't let Omar's desperation destroy this family. Dr. Hafez, I said, how quickly can you get Amira and both children out of this hospital? She checked her watch. My car is in the parking garage. If we can reach the elevator without interference, 20 minutes to be completely clear of the building. Then we need to move now, before Dr. Mahmood's legal team can establish any formal hold on the baby. Omar's eyes narrowed. You're talking about kidnapping my children. I'm talking about protecting them from a father who's trying to change his daughter's medical records rather than accept her existence. The delivery room door opened, and my worst fears materialized. Dr. Mahmood had arrived, flanked by two people in business suits and a hospital administrator I recognized as Janet Walsh from the Patient Advocacy Office. The final confrontation was about to begin. Dr. Mahmood entered with the calculated confidence of a man who'd navigated hospital politics for decades. In his 60s, impeccably dressed despite the 5 a.m. hour, he carried himself like someone accustomed to getting his way through a combination of charm and intimidation. Dr. Chen, he said smoothly, extending his hand. I apologize for the unusual circumstances, but the Kasab family has requested my consultation on what appears to be a complex delivery situation. I didn't shake his hand. Dr. Mahmood, this delivery was completely routine. Baby Nora is healthy, and her gender assessment is unambiguous. Baby Nora? His eyebrows raised slightly. Mr. Kasab informed me the child hadn't been named yet, pending proper medical evaluation. Omar stepped closer to Dr. Mahmood, clearly drawing strength from his presence. I haven't agreed to any name. My wife was still recovering from anesthesia when she made that statement. I wasn't under anesthesia, Amira said firmly, still cradling baby Nora. I had a completely natural delivery, and I was fully conscious when I named my daughter. Janet Walsh from Patient Advocacy consulted her tablet. Dr. Chen, we've received a formal request for secondary gender verification based on religious concerns. Hospital policy requires us to accommodate reasonable religious requests when they don't conflict with medical standards. This isn't reasonable, Elena interjected. Mr. Kasab has spent the last 4 hours explicitly rejecting his healthy daughter. This is medical manipulation, not religious accommodation. Dr. Mahmood moved closer to Amira's bed, his voice taking on a patronizing tone. Mrs. Kasab, I understand you're exhausted and emotional after a difficult labor. Sometimes new mothers become confused about medical details, especially when delivery complications create stressful situations. There were no delivery complications, I said sharply. This was a textbook normal birth. Then surely you won't mind if I perform a brief examination to confirm your findings? Dr. Mahmood smiled, but his eyes remained cold. I'm simply offering a second medical opinion to reassure the family. Dr. Hafez stood up abruptly. Mr. Mahmood, you are not licensed to practice in this state. I checked with the California Medical Board during my drive here. Your temporary privileges were revoked last month following an ethics investigation. The room went silent. Janet Walsh immediately pulled out her phone, presumably to verify this information. Dr. Mahmood's composure slipped slightly. That's a temporary administrative issue being resolved through proper channels. I maintain consulting privileges at several facilities. Not at this one, Dr. Reeves said, checking his own phone. I just confirmed with our credentialing office. Dr. Mahmood has no active privileges at this hospital and hasn't completed our standard background verification process. Omar's face flushed with embarrassment and anger. That's impossible. Dr. Mahmood delivered Layla 4 years ago at University Medical Center. In Michigan, Dr. Hafez clarified. Where he subsequently lost his privileges for performing unnecessary procedures on female infants based on parental gender disappointment. Janet Walsh looked up from her phone, her expression troubled. I'm afraid I need to suspend this consultation request pending verification of Dr. Mahmood's current licensing status. This is discrimination, Omar said desperately. You're denying us religious accommodation based on prejudice against our cultural values. Your cultural values don't include the right to falsify medical records, I replied. Baby Nora is female, healthy, and already legally documented. No amount of secondary examinations will change those facts. Dr. Mahmood gathered his briefcase, his professional mask finally slipping completely. Mr. Kasab, perhaps we should continue this discussion at my private clinic. Away from all this interference. The implication was clear. He was suggesting they leave the hospital with baby Nora for an examination at an unlicensed facility. Absolutely not, Dr. Hafiz said, moving protectively closer to her sister. This baby isn't leaving this hospital without proper medical clearance and legal documentation. Omar looked between Dr. Mahmood and his wife, trapped between his delusions and reality. Baby Nora stirred slightly, making soft, contented sounds that filled the sudden silence. In that moment, I realized Omar had to choose between accepting his daughter or losing his entire family forever. Omar stared at baby Nora for a long moment, his internal struggle visible on his face. Then his phone buzzed with another call from Lebanon, his father again. The sound seemed to snap him out of whatever brief moment of doubt he'd experienced. We're leaving, he announced suddenly, moving toward Amira's bed. All of us. Dr. Mahmood has a private facility 20 minutes from here where we can get proper medical consultation without all this legal interference. Omar, no, Amira said, instinctively turning away to protect Nora. She's not even 6 hours old. She can't leave the hospital yet. The baby is medically stable, Omar replied, his voice taking on the mechanical tone I'd heard him use during business calls. Dr. Mahmood confirmed that healthy newborns can be safely transported for specialized care. Diana stepped between Omar and the bed. Sir, this infant hasn't completed her standard newborn screening protocols. She legally cannot be discharged for another 18 hours minimum. Then we'll wait 18 hours, Omar said. But I want Dr. Mahmood's examination on record before any permanent documentation is filed. Janet Walsh looked increasingly uncomfortable. Mr. Kasab, given the questions about Dr. Mahmood's current licensing status, I can't authorize any external consultations involving hospital patients. Dr. Mahmood's phone rang, and he answered with obvious irritation. His conversation was brief but heated, conducted in hushed tones that still carried across the room. When he hung up, his expression was grim. Mr. Kasab, there's been a complication with the medical board situation. Perhaps it would be better to handle this matter through your family attorney rather than medical channels. Omar's confidence visibly deflated. What kind of complication? The ethics investigation has been expanded based on new complaints filed in the past 24 hours. I'm temporarily restricted from any patient consultations pending review. Dr. Mahmood's professional facade cracked completely. Apparently, someone has been monitoring my communications with families seeking gender-related medical accommodations. Dr. Hafiz smiled grimly. That would be the complaint I filed with the medical board at midnight, including recorded conversations about your willingness to perform medically unnecessary procedures on infants to satisfy parental gender preferences. You recorded our phone calls? Omar's voice rose to nearly a shout. California is a one-party consent state for recording conversations, she replied calmly. Especially when those conversations involve potential child endangerment. Elena's tablet chimed with an urgent message. Dr. Chan, I'm getting reports that someone called Child Protective Services claiming there's an abandoned newborn at our hospital. They're sending an emergency team to investigate. Who called CPS? Omar demanded. Janet Walsh checked her phone. According to the dispatch log, the call came from someone identifying himself as Dr. Rashid Mahmood, reporting concerns about a newborn being held against parental wishes. Dr. Mahmood's face went pale. That's impossible. I never made such a call. Then someone used your name and credentials to file a false report, Dr. Reeves said grimly. Which is a felony in this state. Omar began pacing frantically. This is insane. All I wanted was a second medical opinion about my child's condition. Now everyone's talking about felonies and investigations? Your child doesn't have a condition, I said firmly. She's a perfectly healthy baby girl who deserves a father who loves her unconditionally. Baby Nora woke at the sound of raised voices and began crying, not the soft fussing from earlier, but genuine distress at the tension surrounding her. Amira immediately began soothing her, humming the same Arabic lullaby that had worked before. Omar, Amira said quietly, her voice cutting through the chaos. Listen to your daughter. She knows you're here, and she's scared. Is this really how you want her first day of life to go? For the first time since entering the delivery room, Omar actually looked directly at baby Nora. The tiny infant was reaching one perfect hand toward the sound of voices, her dark eyes wide and alert. Something shifted in Omar's expression, just for a moment, before his phone rang again with another call from Lebanon. Omar stared at his ringing phone, his father's third call in an hour, then looked at his crying daughter. For 10 seconds that felt like eternity, he stood frozen between two worlds, the legacy of conditional love he'd inherited, and the innocent child who needed nothing more than acceptance. He declined the call. Dr. Chen, he said quietly, his voice stripped of all earlier bravado. Would it be safe for me to hold her? The delivery room fell silent except for Nora's soft whimpering. Amira's eyes filled with tears as she looked at her husband with cautious hope. Of course it's safe, I said gently. She's your daughter, Omar. With trembling hands, he accepted baby Nora from Amira. The moment she settled against his chest, her crying stopped completely. She made tiny cooing sounds and curled her fingers around the edge of his shirt. She's so small, he whispered, his voice breaking. Her hands are perfect. Look at her fingers, they're exactly like Layla's were. Dr. Mahmood cleared his throat impatiently. Mr. Kasab, we still need to discuss the medical verification. Get out, Omar said without looking up from his daughter. Just get out. Omar, you're making an emotional decision that will affect your entire family legacy. I said get out. Omar's voice carried the authority I'd heard him use on business calls, but now it was directed at protecting his child instead of rejecting her. My daughter doesn't need verification. She needs her father. Janet Walsh gestured toward the door. Dr. Mahmood, I think it's best if you leave now. As the door closed behind them, Omar sank into the chair beside Amira's bed, still cradling Nora. Amira, I'm so sorry. I'm so incredibly sorry. When she looks at me like this. He touched one tiny cheek with his finger. How could I have thought her gender mattered more than her existence? Omar, Amira said softly, what about your father? Your business expectations? My father had 6 sisters, Omar replied, still gazing at Nora. He never talks about them because his father taught him they weren't important. But I remember visiting Aunt Fatima when I was Layla's age. She was brilliant, kind, stronger than any of her brothers. I loved her, and I let my father convince me that love was weakness. Dr. Hafez sat down slowly, watching her brother-in-law with cautious optimism. Omar, what does this mean for your family? It means I need to learn how to be the father my daughters deserve instead of the son my father demanded. He looked up at me with tears in his eyes. Dr. Chen, is it too late to do the birth certificate correctly? I want her full name to be Nora Hafez Kasab, honoring both sides of her heritage. Elena smiled for the first time all night. It's never too late for that. Omar's phone rang again, Lebanon calling. This time, he answered. Father, I have wonderful news, he said in English, looking directly at baby Nora. You have a beautiful, healthy granddaughter named Nora. She's perfect, and I love her completely. What do you mean that's not what I said earlier? Father, I was wrong earlier. About everything. As I watched Omar explain to his father that daughters were blessings, not disappointments, I realized this was why I became an obstetrician. Not just to deliver babies safely, but to witness the moment when love conquers fear. Baby Nora fell asleep in her father's arms, finally home where she belonged.